once again back in our neck of the woods here with three dates upcoming at the West Hampton Performing Arts Center on the 8th, and again on the 11th at the Space at Westbury, and then again in Tarryton on the 12th. So
that's right. Yes.
Very happy to see some more regular dates in New York.
Sure. Me too.
So I just wanted to talk a little bit about your new album, and the new album champions freedom causes, not just in the external world, of course, but in the internal world of Steve Hackett as well. You know, when we interviewed last, just prior to its release, you had said that this was an album that you always wanted to do. Why are these themes important to you?
Well, I think in terms of the kind of album that I wanted to do, there are a number of factors here. There's the lyrical content of storytelling and things that have an echo way beyond whatever's considered to be modern. But as well as that, sonically, I wanted to make an album that used quite a lot of orchestra and quite a lot of deviations from what people consider to be the regular norm for rock and roll. So I think growing up in the psychedelic era, the crossover from that and the relevance to world music today is something that hasn't escaped my notice. And I wanted to make an album that was as colourful as some of the things that I'd heard in the 60s. And I didn't want it to be geographically just limited to Europe as we know it, and the States. I wanted it to be much wider, so the influences from Azerbaijan, from Malik Mansurov, who plays the tar on the album, the use of duduk from Armenia, the Arabian Oud, music that I'd heard in Morocco, you know, things that stretch it so that it's a little bit like various teams of relay runners as one passes the baton onto another. So one genre interrupts another, the element of surprise. So if you've got a song starting out with folk music, it suddenly turns into something else. And like the opening track, for instance, we start off with the singing wolf, or the wolves at first, and freeze that note, then add drums, but then bring in the basses and chugging orchestral cellos and basses, and then add choir and all the rest. You know, so in a way, it dips in and out of rock and roll, but I don't think it's held to ransom by the idea of mainstream rock. Yes, it has that. It's got aspects of that. It's got aspects of pop as well. But then I've been listening to far too many things which are outside rock to want to be limited to do a mainstream album. I could never be ZZ Top. I don't do that. I like it very much, but I don't do that. Do you know what I mean? I think that the references need to be scattered more widely, and I think rock's shoulders need to be broad enough to be able to encompass all these other things. At least that's my dream, and that's what I tried to bring to reality on this outing.
Yeah, it's well said. And there seems to be a common theme also through the album.
Yes, freedom, absolutely.
Now, there's a reference to a song that's personal on the album.
Love Song to a Vampire. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the song that Chris Squire also played on. That's correct?
That's right. Yes, that's. As far as I know, and no one has challenged this yet, that's the last thing that Chris ever recorded. Nobody knew that was going to be the case, of course, but he happened to be in town just before his last European tour, and he said to me, I'm around for a couple of days. Have you got anything you'd like me to work on? And I said, just so it happens, I'm recording something at the moment that could do with some bass on it. And I said, have you got your instrument with you? He said, no, that's out on tour. Have you got anything? So I had a bass guitar that had not come out of its case practically for about 20 years. So we got it spruced up overnight, and he played it the next day. But the funny thing is, it sounded exactly like him. It was a Fender Precision, but it sounded exactly like him laying into his Rickenbacker. It just had that sound, and and a rising bass figure throughout the chorus of that tune, which in a way I think was made for him, really.
You know, we spoke recently with Patrick Moraz, and
right.
he was talking about Chris's style, you know, with the plectrum, and he was really fascinated that, you know, he always used the plectrum, and, you know, he used it so well that, you know, at times, you know, sometimes you couldn't really even tell, you know, I mean, it's just so fast and precise. What he was doing on the Fender, you know, which is so reminiscent of his sound.
There was that. Yeah, I think there's that twang to it. I mean, we used a PV Classic 50 amp for him with this, which I originally bought as a harmonica amp many years ago, and that doesn't get used very often. But we found that Chris actually sounds great playing through that, as he'd done on some other things we'd done. So we used a speaker simulator, and it had his sound, but at conversational level. There was no tyranny of volume there, but it just had that zingy sound. So I've seen what he used, so the next time I'll pick the bass up myself and try and do the same thing. But you know what? I've got a feeling I won't make the same sound. Not as him.
Yeah. You know, so this and this tour also celebrates the 40th anniversary of Voyage of the Acolyte.
Yeah.
And you know, I was thinking about it. It's 40 years. You know, there's so much work there, and you know, I was wondering, you know, when you look back over your body of work over 40 years, I mean, you've done a very good job of transitioning. You remain vital. The music is crisp, and I think your fans are very appreciative of that. But are there ever times when you're looking back over you know 40 years worth of work, and you deeply feel like the passing of years?
Oh, well, certainly. I mean, there is a box set which celebrates the Charisma years, for instance, from 1975 to 83.
Yes, I saw that on your site.
So all of that as well, and it's a 14 CD set. Well, actually, it's 10 CDs, and the other 4 are DVDs with surround and what have you. But yes, of course, the passing of time with that. In a good way, though, I think it's nice to have it all under one umbrella, and it makes me feel proud knowing that there is that you know, superb collection as far as I'm concerned. And I've been playing tons off of it, and I haven't heard anything that's that bad so far. You know, cherry picking, you know what I mean? Lots of things I'm proud of, and other things that I think, well, you know, here's a track here I thought was a bit weak, but it doesn't sound too bad up against everything else that I've heard these days, and back a bit. So yes, of course, the passing of time is I think all of us want to be able to access the best of the times that were without the problems, and it's only human to want to be able to do that. And here I am in my 60s, and that's no secret. You know, listening to my 25-year-old self. Never mind looking at a picture of myself looking 25. Who wouldn't want to be in the first flush of all of that? But on the other hand, there's the experience of now. I wouldn't want to be the player that I was then. I wouldn't want to be limited to that. I wouldn't want to be without all the daily experiments that were sometimes torturous, but sometimes led to new techniques being born, and ideas coming up, and being able to play better, write better, sing better, all that. I don't know if I can twist better. I don't know if I'd win any twist competitions these days like I did when I was 12. But there's something else that happens, I think, with, you know, the passing of time. There's an assurance that you reach, a level of saying, well, yeah, I've been looking at this thing for a long time now, and all the things I wanted to be able to do, I've managed to do, and continue to surprise myself. So I guess what I'm saying is, I'm proud us Brits are always modest. We're raised to be modest. The education system over here, it's always designed to knock you down rather than to big you up. And so we've all got that. Excuse me for this, but I feel proud of it. So it's something about being British, I guess.
Okay. When you reach back into that material from Acolyte, was that? I mean, now you're kind of reconnecting with it and resurrecting it and reconstructing it for live performance. What kind of challenges did you find in going back into that material like that?
Well, I think it's better now. Partly the band that I'm with, partly the technology, again, experience, and being able to pull off things live that would have seemed impossible at one time. I used to watch bands that at one time with a fraction of the skill that this team I'm working with possesses, and I'd be very happy with something a lot more basic, back in the day. But they are a great team. A guy said to me the other day, "What's it like to have the world's best band?" That was his take on it. I thought, oh, great. But if there is a world's best band, it's not because it's got the best equivalent of sportsmen in it. It's because it works as a team. What made the Beatles? It was a team. It perhaps wasn't about technique, but it was about integration, and the way people play off of each other, I think, is the thing that really makes a difference.
It's interesting. That's an interesting observation. Not too long ago, I was listening to an interview with it was Lenny Kravitz, and he was talking about Ringo Starr, and he said, much to the surprise of the interviewer, he said he thought Ringo Starr was one of the best drummers in the world, and the interviewer was like, well, you can't really mean that. How can you say that? And he could keep time, but what he said was that I thought was so interesting, and similar to what you just said, was he knew how to play with that band. He knew how to get out of the way, and not step on the Lennon and McCartney thing, and because of that, he just admired. It was the synergy he was referring to.
Yes. Well, Phil Collins said practically the same thing when I first worked with him. He said, no, Ringo's a great drummer. He said, because Ringo is a feel drummer, and that's what characterizes that playing. He's not talking about Billy Cobham. He's not talking about today's players like Marco Minnemann, who are the fastest guys on the block. It's not about that. It's serving the song, isn't it? Doing the right thing, playing something that's appropriate, and at times not playing. And I don't think a drummer needs to be virtuosic in order to play appropriately or even stunningly. You're in the engine room there. It doesn't have to be a solo every time, although it's nice when you're aware of the extra gear that a drummer can bring to something when he's playing flat out. That's impressive, the energy. And I like working with Gary for that reason, Gary O'Toole.
Uh-huh. Gary's part of the U.S. lineup as well?
That's right, yes, he's part of the U.S. lineup. There's Royner Stolt is in the band as well from Flower Kings and Transatlantic. There is Rob Townsend and on All Things Blown, and Roger King on keyboards. We have Nad Sylvan. When we do the Genesis things, Nad sings it, and sometimes Gary takes the lead on those as well, and we swap them around. And the solo stuff, I tend to sing that myself, and other people harmonize with me, as they do with the Genesis things. So, we have this all-inclusive approach, and we do it in surround sound. And it's great to hear songs like Cinema Show in surround. So when the choir kicks in, it's huge. It always did shake the building back in the day, but now you get it fully immersive.
Right. Instead of just the bass pedals carrying it,
Bass pedals, exactly. The bass pedals and all of that. The bass bins these days are something else. So it is a huge sound, and sometimes when Gary is just doing a drum check, the drum sound, it gets to the point where once he's gone through the individual drums, he'll start playing, and it sounds like an orchestra of drums, just the drums alone. So, the guy that's mixing sound out front, Ben Fenner, is tremendously good. So, and he'll add all those extra things if we need it. The non-Lin stuff and all the rest. So it's a huge sound at times, and the keyboard string stuff, and sometimes Mellotron Plus. It's a big, gorgeous sound.
Yeah, I can imagine too. I've heard some of the live recordings. I have not yet experienced it, but am very much hoping to catch the Westbury Show. So
thank you. I'm sure. I feel it'll be very good. I'm really looking forward to playing again, and with this new set of both the stuff from Acolyte and the latest stuff from Wolflight, and then we usually have an intermission. Then we play the Genesis set, and so this band becomes at least two other bands, and it's extraordinary the way it develops through the ages, in a way. And we go right back to 1971. That spans such a huge time frame. But the funny thing is, even though we go right back to the beginning of that, it doesn't feel like there's been any passing of time. It's usually a case of by the time we play Musical Box, it leaves people standing. It just seems to get better and better with the passing of time. Somehow, little tweaks here, little suggestions, little nuances, and it just feels really strong. And so I don't have any problem bringing back pieces like Cinema Show or Get 'Em Out by Friday or That Night Down on Broadway. They just feel like they're better than ever, really.
They are. They are timeless. And even when you go back and listen to these albums as an old, prog rock fan, it still seems fresh. I don't know why. It's not that it's just because I love it. It's just fresh. It's not dated. It's not. It doesn't fit. It still doesn't fit any mold.
I think you're right. It doesn't really fit any molds. I mean, I know that the early Genesis stuff tends to be referred to as prog, but I think there's a vast difference between that stuff and the majority of impenetrable stuff that often goes under the banner of being progressive.
You're right.
Because I don't think that Genesis were overly complex most of the time. I think that there was a simplicity, and then it might build to a complexity. But I think there was a simplicity of intention that ran through it, because we were all trying to serve the best interests of the song, instead of all trying to be heroes at the same time. And I think that's often what lets down so much of the new prog stuff.
It's interesting. Yeah, it's an interesting observation.
Playing to each other, listening to each other, and not doing more than is necessary. I think that makes arrangements work. So it's okay for a band to double up and the whole band to play as one instrument. If you can get people to do that, I think you're winning. There's no magic formula for it. It's just an instinctive thing.
Did you find it difficult to bring these songs to this new lineup, and did you find yourself wanting to direct the sound to try to bring the essence of the old work to this band?
It's a funny thing, but whenever I have a complete overhaul of the set that I'm doing, it takes about 3 months. It takes that long for me to remember it. Other people who've been learning my stuff have been saying the same thing, whether it's Genesis stuff or my stuff or both. And it's a bit like putting something on a theatrical stage and having to do so many scene changes. But those scene changes happen in sound terms. I mean, you're playing away and you're being a rock guitarist one minute, and then you're required to do a clean sound, and that's a different dynamic, and you need to play more quietly with that. You're making these adjustments all the time, so to get the tap dancing right is part of it, and singing over the top of it, and it's the whole balancing act of it. It's I suppose it's complex when you play 3 hours of it a night. It's challenging in terms of memory, but I like to think there's a simplicity, even if it's three people arpeggiating, all playing something slightly different to each other, but similar. It's got to sound like it's one instrument. It's got to sound like, you know, what orchestras do, which is somebody has got a score sheet and a pen, and it's not anarchy. It's playing sympathetically to each other.
Yeah. Is the music notated for the players?
Well, the things that I do when I write these days, I do notate. Yes, because I don't trust memory, and that makes it easier when I've got an absolute fixed idea of it. I've already whittled it down by then, and I've got a fixed idea. So by the time I'm recording something, I'm not having schizophrenic disagreements with myself. I'm as organised as I can be at that point, and you can't be too organised. So all I know is that in order to bring this set in on time, I was getting up and rehearsing myself sometimes at 5:30 in the morning, just because I need to be able to do this stuff when I'm tired. I need it to be muscle memory. I need to know what I'm doing. I need to have worked it all out. And sometimes you'll go through over a phrase 100 times, you know, a difficult phrase, and that one will still be the one that you've got to be right on top of it too. It's absolutely obsessive compulsive, but that's what I think makes music work, really, the best of it. I rely on that. I've got a black book, and stuff is down on paper as soon as I've got it in mind. It goes down on that. I trust that more than anything else. I know we can record things electronically and what have you, but I trust pen and ink much more than anything else. And then it doesn't mean that there isn't a spontaneous combustion that happens when you're recording. Of course, an idea will come immediately. Ideas for soloing are often put together at the last minute, so you're interacting to the existing picture. But in order to get a framework down, it seems to me, you need to be organised. There's no substitute for hard work, and music will take as much hard work as you want to give it, and you never know if it's ever going to be good enough at the end of the day, even if you've done that. So you've got to love it in the first place to go through the agonies of it. you've got to go through the tortured artist effect, as Todd Rundgren once said, in order to get to the next bit.
Yeah, it's true. Very true.
To get to the good stuff.